So when you want to apply the finite element analysis to your actual house, I want to show you kind of in a quick video of the way you can do that. So the other video is kind of really good in terms of showing you the ins and outs of how to get everywhere. So I'm going to assume that you've watched that first, or you at least understand from what we've spoken about in class. So for this video, I am going to not really explain everything outside of how to set up the house. So if you get lost by some of the options in this video, please watch the other video and then come back to this one. So here I have the house. I have most of the requirements. I think I might be missing a window or two, but this is good enough model to work with. So if we want to kind of analyze a few different loading cases here, we have to first determine which portions of this house are fixed and will not move. And that would be anything on the bottom, because the bottom of the house is connected to either the foundation or the ground. These posts on the awning or on the overhang, those at the bottom would also be secured to the ground. So the first thing that I need to do before I do anything is I need to click and I have to click everything. So I'm going to click at the top, hold down shift, and click on the bottom. I've now selected everything: the four walls, the roof, the awning, the posts. Everything is now highlighted, which you can see over here, or it was highlighted. So everything's highlighted. What I need to do now is I need to make sure I'm in my parts list, and I need to merge everything. So I'm going to come over here and I'm just going to rename this as house. So now everything is just one piece. This one tells you inside, yes, is made up of others, but right now this whole thing is one specific piece, which is required before I analyze it. So please make sure that you have merged everything. And now what I need to do is go into my finite element settings. We'll click analysis to get our analysis set up. And in this case, let's say that the house is built out of wood. So we'll assume everything is it's a wooden house. So I've got my analysis set up. I've got my material applied. I need to give these constraints now. So what I want to do is I want to zoom as best I can to the bottom. And I need to set some constraints. So using the lock, I'm going to add, let's see here, this will add here. And I believe, sorry. Yeah. So what's happening here is I was trying to choose the face, and I accidentally chose this little kind of segment here, this line. So you need to make sure you're choosing faces, because here you'll see it says face. So I'm just going to go around, and I'm going to, as carefully as I can. I don't need to add this because the top of the doorway would not be fixed to the ground. So I'm just going around the outside, and I'm trying to add as many of these faces as I can, because everything along the ground here would be fixed. Oops. Okay, so it takes a little bit of time. I think you might even be able to use like control click or command click and choose a bunch. I'll try that in a second. But you'll notice all around the bottom now is all fixed to the ground, which is good. The only other two things I am concerned about are the bottoms of these posts. Now if I click one and I hold command and I click the other one and then click add, that will do both. So if you want to save yourself some time, instead of doing it the way I did where I clicked individually, you can just hold down command and then click everything all at once. So if you take a look now, it's kind of hard to see, but if you take a look, the entire bottom of the house is now fixed to the ground, and the bottom of these two posts is fixed, which means if I apply any kind of load, those sections are not going to move, which is good because that's typically what happens with the house. Those are fixed in the ground, and in no way are those going to be able to move. So let's take a look. We'll rotate a little bit. All right, so what I want to do now is let's look at this angle. I want to put a load, let's say, on the two roofs, the awning and then the roof itself. So I'm going to hit OK because I fixed everything in place. Now what I want to do is I'd like to choose. Let's make the load. This is a house, so let's make like 50,000. Maybe we'll get a good deformation here. Now I'm going to choose this. You'll notice the arrows. If I zoom in, the arrows are actually going up, which is not what we want. We want to assume this is like snow or something, so I'll reverse the direction. And then I'll choose the awning, and I'll hit add reference as well. So now I have the awning and I have the roof, and those are both being affected by, we'll say, snow or something like that. So I've got my loading on the top. I've got everything fixed on the bottom. So I'll hit OK. I'm almost ready to go. So all I need to do is make sure I highlight Calculx Tools. Nope, I'm sorry. I need to make sure that I choose my house and I apply an end mesh. If If I don't apply an end mesh, let's do coarse. If I don't apply an end mesh, then I am not going to get the results at all because there's going to be nothing to analyze. Let's see. Now this is a bigger project, so it's taking, it didn't take that long, but it took a little bit longer than the mailbox in the last video. So now I've got my mesh, I've got my loadings. So now I can go back in here, Calculex, and let's go ahead and let's run this analysis. Now again, this is bigger, so here's the wheel. It might take a little bit. The more intensive your objects are, the more intensive your designs are, the longer it's going to take. You'll notice that there's some really fine detail along the edges. And that's using the coarse mesh. So using like the very fine mesh, I've had some objects or some projects I've built in here that take 30, 35 minutes or more just to kind of process all this. So that wasn't too bad. That was about 30 seconds maybe. So we should be good. So now, if I come over here to Calculex results, of course this is slowing down because there's so much going on right now in the program. If I double click on that, now I can start to see what happens. If I want to look at the displacement, we can kind of apply this. You see the awning bends a little bit. The roof doesn't really bend because after all it is a house. We can increase the slider max. Let's make it like 1,000. So if we increase the odds. Now this is well beyond obviously what would really happen, but it gives us an idea of where this thing is going to fail. So obviously the awning is going to fail before the house, and that makes sense. The house has walls to support it. This awning only has two. So if we want to look at some of the stresses, if we zoom in a little bit, the stresses on these poles you can see are kind of going to be where these yellow areas are, or these red areas. So I can adjust that. And you'll notice that a lot of the stress tends to be at the areas that would like to bend, like down here, but are stuck in the ground. The ones that can bend a little bit more, it depends. Although if I zoomed in on the other side of this, I would expect to find, yeah, you'll notice on the inside here, there's some orange and yellow. So looking through this program will allow you to kind of figure out what you need to adjust. So for right now, I believe for your assignment, you need to do a few different loadings. So this would be an example. You could take a screenshot of this to show me you've run this analysis. If you wanted to switch things up, we're going to close this. We'll bring our model back. And all we have to do is, after we've recorded this, control click on the results and let's delete them. Get rid of this result mesh too. We don't need that. Oops. Delete. All right, so we've got our original mesh. All I'll do is I will change the forces. Let's control click to remove these. Let's say I want to know what happens like a hurricane load. So I'm going to apply, let's say 50,000 newtons to the side wall. We'll hit OK. Oops. Bring that back. I don't have to change my fixed constraints because it's the same house. So that means that everything, okay, what happened? Everything along the bottom should still be fixed, which it is. So all I've done is just adjust the force. Now I can come down here, choose analysis, Calculex tools, and run my new case based on this new loading. Again, it'll probably take about 30, 35 seconds, but once that runs, it should give me the mesh, it should give me the results, the stress, the deformation, and we should be able to make some design changes. Okay, so we've got this. I'll double click on my results. If you ever see some gray sticking out here, if you go back to the model case, that just means that both the mesh and the actual object are on. So I can use spacebar just to shut the actual object off. Okay, so I'll go back here to tasks, and now you can take a look. A lot of the displacement is occurring around this window, and that kind of makes sense because it's in the middle and there's not a lot of support there. I can kind of adjust this as we go, so it makes sense that the wall will be pushed in. If I want to look at the stresses, I can do that as well. If I really want to exaggerate it, I can put the slider max up to something like 10,000. It will not let me put 10,000. Yes, it will, which means now you can really show this thing deforming, which is well beyond anything that would happen. But if you adjust that slider max, it lets you really see what's happening. So if there was enough force on this, you'd see that the other walls actually start to get blown out a little bit. But that would be an excessive amount of force. All right, so you'll have to just adjust the loading cases based on the requirement, but this should kind of give you a really good idea of what you need to do. And then just to repeat, if I wanted to switch this, I would just go back into the force, and then I could kind of adjust whatever I want based on the requirements. So good luck.